Okay, so let's start the lesson with the history of correction. Okay, so we have right here the correctional system in the Philippines. In the late 1980s, institutions for the confinement of convicts and the detention of those awaiting trial included a variety of national prisons and penal farms, as well as numerous small local jails and lockups. In general, the national prisons house more serious offenders, and those serving short term sentences were held in local facilities. The prison system at the national level was supervised by the Bureau of Prisons of the DOJ. So in the Philippines, our correctional system is that the jails, it's a facility wherein its clients or the detainees that are awaiting trial, those who are still being investigated, and whose duration or sentences is 3 years below. That is being handled by the BJMP, the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, which is under the DILG. Whereas for those offenders who have committed, let us say, a serious offenses, so they will be put in a prison. So here in the Philippines, we have 7 correctional facility, and the duration for those offenders will be put in one of those 7 correctional facilities. That would be 3 years and 1 day and up. And we have right here the criminal justice system of the Philippines and its component. So the CJS, it's a system that is made by the government when it comes to controlling, maintaining peace and order, and also enforcing of laws. And we have 5 components of the criminal justice system in the Philippines. Yeah, so as what I've said, the CJS, the star of it is the criminal. So it's a process in the community by which crimes are investigated. And persons suspected of an offense, therefore, are taken into custody and then prosecuted in court and punished if found guilty of a crime committed. So the 5 pillars of the PCJS are the law enforcement, prosecution, court correction, and community. So once an offender has been arrested, he will undergo those 5 components. Yes, so as what I've said, um, we have here the 5 components of the CJS, and it is coordinated, or this 5 should coordinate with one another, and they are interdependent and supportive of one another in order to achieve the very purpose of the system. And it is distinct because each component has its own respective functions to perform as an institution or as an integral part of another system aside from the CJS. So we have here the functions of the 5 components in the criminal justice system. The first one is the law enforcement. Its main priority in CJS is to arrest or detain the violator. So the law enforcement officer is the one that initiates contact with the offender. So the officer right here, um, to effect the warrant issued by the court, they do it. They execute the warrant of arrest that is being issued by the judge. And its function as well is to conduct an investigation on the alleged crime committed by a person. And once a person has been arrested or detained, then here comes the prosecution. So this is the second pillar, and its main function is to conduct preliminary investigation. Preliminary investigation, its main purpose is to check if there is probable cause. So the one who brings formal charges to the court, it's the prosecution pillar. And we have right here the court. The court, its function is to conduct cross-examination of the witnesses, and the judge conducts trial. The one who adjudge whether the offender is guilty or not based on the evidences submitted. So the judge is the one who issue the arrest, the warrant of arrest, or the search warrant. And we have the fourth pillar. This is considered as the weakest component of the CJS for the reason that it fails to rehabilitate and reform the offenders. So its main function is to reform the convicted offender. So the correction is its main function as well is for custody, safekeeping, and rehabilitation of offenders. And we have the last pillar, which is the community. Its function is to help and coordinate the program of the government, specifically on the maintenance of peace and order. And here is the process of the PCJS. So it would really start with the law enforcement. Next would be the prosecution. Third pillar is the court. And the fourth pillar is a correction. And the last pillar is community. So once the offender is in the law enforcement side, he is called as a suspect. And once the offender is now on the prosecution side, so he is now called the respondent. And once he is now on the court, he will be called accused. And once a person is in the correction pillar, he will be called as an inmate or PDL, which is the new term for inmate, which means person deprived of liberty. And the last one, once he goes back to the community, he will be called ex-convict. So and we have right here the rehabilitation. So it seeks to prevent future crime by altering a criminal's behavior. So how does the Bucor and BJMP do that? By giving the offenders educational and vocational programs, treatment center placement, and mental health counseling. So rehabilitation, its aim is to change the attitude or trait of the offender. And we have here the difference between penal management and penal administration. When we say penal management, it's more of controlling and managing the jail and prisons. It focuses on the facility. Whereas, whereas if we talk about penal administration, it refers to those in charge of a prisoner's adequate living place and needs like food, water, bed, and others. So it's about giving quality of life while the offender is still in prisoner jail. And jail, we have differentiated this a while ago that jail, it's a prison facility or place for a person who's convicted for minor crimes. So jail in the Philippines is being handled by the BJMP. So it houses the detainees awaiting trial or still undergoing investigation, and those whose sentence is 3 years below. Whereas when we say prison, it's a place for a person is convicted for grave or serious crime. So these offenders are already adjudged guilty, and their prison term is 3 years and 1 day up. So we have right here the concept of correction and penology. The old concept of correction, it's more focused on punishment, regardless of the crime or violation committed. But right now, the modern concept of correction, it's more on confining a person within a prison, and its purpose is not to punish them, but was a means of keeping the perpetrator of crime detailed until the actual punishment could be carried out. The modern concept of correction, it's more on rehabilitating the offender. And correction, it's a pillar that focuses on custody, safekeeping, safekeeping and rehabilitation of offender. Whereas penology, it's a division of criminology that specifically focuses on the study of punishment. Because when I say penology, it comes from the Latin pena, which means pain. And we have right here an early form of punishment. When we say punishment, any acts that would inflict pain, harm, or injury to the offender. So, blood feuds, in ancient culture, developed the idea of justice based on vengeance, retribution, and compensation. Blood feud, family war, it's a lengthy conflict between families or groups involving a cycle of retaliatory killings or attacks. And we have here the Lex Talionis coming from the Code of Hammurabi. So it is the law of retaliation. It's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And it is important to remember that these formulations were codes, not laws. So Lex Talionis, it's a principle that if you would kill someone, then the punishment for that would be death. And on the Lex Talionis, under the on the Code of Hammurabi, the punishment were really severe. It was really barbaric. And when it comes to the medieval punishment, so like ancient forerunners, medieval Europeans were very brutal in the exercise of punishment. They employ knives, axes, whips, barnacles, collars, and so on. And medieval punishment, this is during Middle Ages time. It's the fall of the Roman Empire and the beginning of the Renaissance period, or the Age of Enlightenment. And one of the medieval punishment is the Iron Maiden. It's a box-like device, just like what you see on your screen right now, on the right side. So it's like a coffin or a box-like device with front half hinge like a door so that a person could be placed inside. And when a door was shut, protruding spikes, both back and front, enter the body of the victim. And we have the rack. So that is another medieval punishment, kind of device that drags apart the joint in the feet and hands. And we have the Tower of London. So originally, it is built as a fortress for the defense of a city. And this is a famous symbol for such a cruel punishment. It was there that an even more torturous contraption was developed. So the most common punishment that is employed in the Tower of London is the rack. So it's a modified form of the rack that we have discussed previously, because here the rack will stretch its victim, and this machine would compress the body of the victims. It's more dreadful and more complex than the rack that we have discussed, because the whole body is bent and some blood exudes from the tips of the hands and feet. And we have banishment and exile. So serious offenders were transported for banishment or exile, and banishment was considered an appropriate response to misbehavior, even in the modified form for small children. So example of this would be cutting off all communication to his parents. Banishment is more on removing the offender from the place as a punishment. The offender cannot go back to the community. Whereas exile, a person will leave the place on their own will. They can go back whenever they want to. And we have another one, the stocks and pillories. So these were considered a mild form of punishment. Its main purpose is to humiliate the offender. So this is used for public humiliation, and stocks were used as far back as Roman times. So if you try to check on the picture, the hands and feet seems like it was put in a wood. So that is stocks and pillories. It's a corporal punishment. And we have whips, the most common form punishment before. So they use the device called cut o nine tail. And sometimes pillories were used as a whipping post. And yeah, just like what you see in the picture. So a person would be tied up on a somehow pillory post, and then he would be punished using the cat o nine tail. And we have the gossip's bridal, or they also called it scold's bridal or blank. So for women who have been accused of scandalous language, gossip, or nagging, so this is the one that they commonly employ to those women who did or who do those types of crime. So it's an iron frame that was placed over the head of the offender. And we have the docking stool or stool of repentance. We say stool, it's like a chair. So just like on the picture. So it is used for punishment of disorderly women. And the cocking stool was a form of woman pine or woman's punishment, as referred to in Langland Spears' Blowman. And we have the gibbet. So it is the use of a gallows type structure from which the dead or dying bodies of criminals were hanged on public. So it serves as a reminder to the public that if they would do a crime, they would be hanged out like this. So gibbet, a body of the offender, a dead body of the offender would be hanged to deter other people from committing a crime. So the practice of placing a criminal on display with a gibbet is also called hanging in chains. So what is commitment order? Commitment order, it's a written order of a court or any other agency authorized by the law. So basically, it's the judge or any other officer who can issue this commitment order. Its main purpose is for safekeeping, for custody of an inmate, and his or her case is still pending. So the competent authority that we are talking, or those authorities who can issue commitment order, then these are the following. It could be any judges of the court, from lower court to higher court. We have Sandigan Bayan, military courts, House of Representatives, Senate, the Commission on Elections, Bureau of Immigration and Deportation, and Board of Pardons and Parole. And we have the mitimus. So when we say mitimus, it's a document issued by the court. It's only the court can issue that. And here, the inmate has already been adjudged guilty, and the purpose of mitimus is for the inmate to serve his or her sentence. So, for us to differentiate the two, commitment order can either be issued by competent authority or the judge. Its purpose is for detention. For safekeeping custody of the inmate, the duration is non-fixed, for the reason that the case is still pending. Whereas when we say mitimus, only the judge can issue it. And its purpose is for the inmate to serve his or her sentence. And the sentence is fixed according to the crime that was committed by the offender. So we have right here the carpeta. This is known as the person deprived of liberty record or jacket. So this refers to the institutional record of inmates, which consists of the mitimus, commitment order, prosecutor's information, and the decision of the trial court, including the appellate court. Whereas prison record talks about the record of the inmate's personal circumstances and of history of the offense committed, sentence imposed, criminal case, history of prison. So that is prison record. And correction is a process focused mainly on the orientation of the criminal offenders to prevent them from repeating their delinquent actions through the rehabilitation program that is offered by the Bucor or BJMP. So correction as a process focuses on what are the steps or actions that rectifies or improve the offender's attitude or disposition. So correction in the CJS, so when we say CJS, it's a machinery. It's a system used by the government in the control and prevention of crimes and criminality. So it's composed of the 5 pillars, which is the law enforcement, prosecution, court correction, and community. So we have here the origin of the word prison. So the word prison has found its roots from the Greco-Roman word presidio, from word pre, which means before, and sidio means inside. So it's synonymous to a fence, cave, or dungeon. And the word presidio started in the reign of King Hammurabi of Babylon in 1729 before Christ era. And the origin of the word prison, So even in the Middle Age, the term presidio became popular and was feared at the height of the construction of big temples in ancient Mesopotamia. So the prison's concept during ancient Mesopotamia is of um, a model, a ziggurat. So that's on the right side of your skin, the upper portion, and also the concept of prison in Egypt is more on pyramid. So the one that you see on the lower part of your screen, like yeah, the pyramid. And we have right here some historical references. So Gulag, it is known as labor camp. So Gulag is a Russian acronym for main administration of corrective labor camps. It's a system of forced labor camps and prisons used by the Soviet Union for political dissidents and criminals. So Gulag, whenever you're captured by the Russia or you are an offender, so you would be put inside this prison. And that prison is a labor camp wherein you're forced to do some tedious, very hard labor there. And also we have our concept of gulag here in the Philippines, specifically in Banawe. So Banawe is a town in the Ifugao province of the Philippines known for its spectacular rice terraces carved into the mountainsides. So the gulag of Banawe is actually a garbage heap. So if you are, let us say, an offender in the Igorot tribe, then you would be put inside this garbage heap. Yeah, so this is the gulag of Banawe. So the gulag of Igorot tribes refers to where the refuse is dumped. And if Russia has a concept of gulag, then Germany also has a concept of gulag. And this is known as very dangerous, and it is a Nazi concentration camp. And these camps held mostly political prisoners and German civilians deemed dangerous by the Soviet regime. So the conditions were very harsh, with many prisoners suffering from malnutrition, disease, and forced labor. And we have right here the Gulag of Russia. So here, the Gulag of Russia is actually a major instrument of political repression under Joseph Stalin. So it's a forced labor camp. And the origin of it was that it was established in 1919. So initially, this housed common criminals and political opponents of the Bolshevik regime. So tentatively, according to research, there are around 1.7 million who died from this gulag.